Security camera footage shows a young man closely watching his car being cleaned at a car wash. At first glance, it looks like a normal scene. What those cameras don't show is that days earlier, he had brutally murdered his girlfriend. That very night, after the crime, he had dinner with his friends as if nothing had happened. Later, he headed to a wooded area to dump the body. This contrast between apparent normalcy and the gravity of what happened is the starting point of a story marked by control and violence. The case of Jessica Gonzalez. Every day, we live alongside evil. We witness the darkest side of human behavior. The suffering inflicted by one individual on others is a constant threat in our society. On Criminal Investigators, we will delve into that dark side of humanity. We'll bring the most twisted crimes to the screen and try to get inside the minds of those who commit such terrible acts. I'm Mario, and today I bring you another case. But before we begin, I want you to tell me where you're watching us from. We love knowing how far these stories reach. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share this video if you think someone else might be interested. And now, let's begin. Jessica Gonzalez Villaseñor was born in 1999 in Morelia, Michoacán, Mexico. She was the third child of Martín González and Verónica Villaseñor. She grew up with her siblings in a hard-working, close-knit family. The family owned a rotisserie chicken business that provided them with a stable life. At home, hard work and communication were part of their daily routine. Jessica grew up in this close environment, maintaining a constant relationship with her parents and siblings. From a young age, she showed an interest in school and social activities. Her classmates described her as strong-willed and determined. She enjoyed outdoor activities and had a love for horses. After finishing high school, she decided to train as an elementary school teacher. She began her professional studies in the city and made progress in her training over the following years. In 2018, while in the middle of her professional training, Jessica met Diego Uric Mañón Melgoza at a concert. At the time, she was 19, and he was 16. After that meeting, they began seeing each other more frequently, and that's how their relationship started. In 2019, she participated with other classmates in an activity organized for underprivileged children at a rural shelter, an initiative for which she was publicly recognized. At the same time, she remained focused on finishing her studies. In early 2020, she completed her teacher training and began working. Due to the global health emergency, she taught classes online. By then, Jessica was balancing her new job, time with her family, and her relationship with Diego. So, Monday, September 21st, 2020, started out as a normal day for the young woman. She spent the morning at home, doing her daily chores. During the day, she sent a message to her mother to let her know she was going out to meet a friend and would be back soon. Around 5 in the afternoon, she got ready to leave. Before leaving, she had a brief conversation with one of her brothers. Minutes later, she left the house. That was the last time anyone in her family saw her alive. As the hours passed, Jessica didn't return home. Around 8 in the evening, the first signs of worry began. They tried to contact her, but her phone was off and calls went straight to voicemail. Anxiety grew as the night went on. Around 11 on the night of September 21st, the concern in Jessica's house became urgent. It was unusual for her not to answer messages or calls. Her brother started contacting friends and acquaintances to ask if anyone knew anything about her. He also contacted the friend she was supposedly meeting. The answer was clear. They had no plans to meet that day, and they hadn't spoken in several days. With that information, the explanation Jessica had given before leaving was ruled out. The family intensified the search on their own. They made calls, searched parts of the city, and during the early hours of the morning, they went to the authorities to report her missing. On September 22nd, Jessica was formally reported missing to the appropriate prosecutor's office. From that moment, the corresponding procedures and investigations began. Meanwhile, family and friends began sharing her photo on social media in hopes of getting information. Once the investigation began, authorities started taking statements from people close to Jessica and reviewing available information about her final hours. Initially, a theory emerged that she might have met with a rideshare driver. That lead was explored, and the young man voluntarily came in to give a statement. It was later determined that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. Meanwhile, Jessica's cell phone records were analyzed to get information about her last activity. At the same time, family and friends intensified the sharing of her photo on social media. Public attention began to grow, and with it, the pressure to find out what happened. As the investigation progressed, the prosecutor's office managed to establish who Jessica had been with on the afternoon of September 21st. Testimony and other evidence gathered during the investigation indicated that the young woman had been seen getting into a gray Volkswagen Polo. That car was driven by Diego Uric Mañón Melgoza, Jessica's boyfriend. When questioned by authorities, Diego stated that he had dropped Jessica off near her house around 6:30 in the evening. According to his version, he had no further contact with her after that. However, as more data was analyzed, inconsistencies began to emerge between that statement and other evidence being added to the case file. Authorities began reviewing security cameras in different parts of the city, as well as phone records related to the case, to establish more clearly what happened after that last meeting. During this process, a piece of evidence emerged that would completely change the course of the investigation. Security cameras captured the gray Volkswagen Polo at a car wash located in the same residential area where Diego lived. The footage shows Yana Suarez, who was also Diego's partner at the time, driving the vehicle. At the establishment, she requested a deep clean. According to records, she asked for special attention to be paid to the seats and, insistently, to the trunk. Minutes later, Diego himself arrived at the scene in another car. He supervised the work and asked for the back of the vehicle to be cleaned again. The footage shows him checking the interior before leaving. The car was later seized by authorities for forensic testing. Despite the wash, forensic analysis detected traces of blood inside. Tests confirmed that the blood belonged to Jessica. On Friday, September 25, 2020, 4 days after her disappearance, authorities deployed a search operation in the area where Jessica's phone had registered its last location. Security forces, prosecutor's office staff, and trained dogs participated in the search. The search focused on a wooded area south of Morelia, near the residential development where Diego lived. Around 3:25 in the afternoon, Jessica's lifeless body was found. Before we continue, let's take a quick break. If you're finding this video interesting, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. That really helps us keep making more videos and telling these kinds of true stories. That said, let's get back to the story. Forensic exams revealed the severity of the attack. She had more than 30 blows to her head, as well as injuries to her neck, chest, abdomen, and legs. The report determined that she suffered a traumatic brain injury that caused a subarachnoid hemorrhage. According to specialists, her death was slow and painful. Signs of sexual abuse were also found. With the discovery, the case stopped being investigated as a disappearance and was formally treated as a femicide. The news sparked a strong reaction in society. As the prosecutor's office moved forward with gathering evidence, public pressure grew, and Diego's name became the focus of the investigation. Now that the investigation is centered on Diego, it's necessary to understand who he was and the dynamic of his relationship with Jessica. Diego was born on January 2, 2002 in Morelia. He was the son of Anaid Melgoza and Bruno Mañón. His parents were separated, and his mother later remarried a businessman. He came from an economically stable family and lived in a residential area of the city. He attended a private school and played football. On social media, he shared images related to his academic and athletic life. Jessica met Diego when she was 19 and he was 16. From the beginning, she fell deeply in love. She spoke of him with hope and dreamed of building a future together. But the relationship was not balanced. Diego had an explosive, controlling, and dominant temper. He preferred to keep the relationship a secret, while Jessica integrated him into her life and spoke openly about him with her family. When arguments arose because he was seeing other people, the situation escalated. It wasn't just verbal fights. On several occasions, he even physically assaulted her. Even so, Jessica downplayed what happened. She said she would be able to change him over time. Diego wasn't just in a relationship with her. He was also involved with Yana Suarez. Like Jessica, Yana was in love with him. But the same pattern repeated with her. On one occasion, he forced Yana into the trunk of his car and drove around for a while with her locked inside. He did it to show who was in charge. Humiliation and control were part of the dynamic. This behavior was not an isolated incident. He held a knife to another young woman's neck during an argument. In general, the same pattern appeared in all his relationships: control, intimidation, and violence. It was also known that he liked to engage in violent sexual relations, regardless of the physical or emotional harm it might cause. While Jessica kept believing she could change him, Diego's pattern repeated over and over. With that background, September 21st, 2020 arrived. That afternoon, Diego picked Jessica up in his gray Volkswagen Polo. She got in, and they headed toward the southern part of Morelia. Instead of returning to the city, he took her to a remote property near the residential development where he lived. There, he sexually assaulted her and then took her life. Afterward, he wrapped the body in a blanket he used in the back of the car and placed it in the trunk. Later, he met up with his friends. First, they had dinner together, and then he asked for their help to get rid of the body. Although they initially showed resistance, they ended up participating. The group traveled in 2 vehicles. Diego was in one, while his friends were in the Polo, where the body was in the trunk. They headed to a wooded area near the residential development where he lived. There, Diego took the wrapped body and went into the trees to dump it. Minutes later, he returned, and they all left the area. In the following days, Hannah also participated in subsequent actions related to the vehicle, including taking it to the car wash, an event that had already been identified as part of the investigation. With the timeline of events established, we need to go back to September 25th, the day Jessica's body was found. After the discovery, the prosecutor's office requested that Diego come in to give a statement. By then, he was already considered a key figure in the investigation. However, he did not show up when requested. Shortly after, it was confirmed that he was no longer in Morelia. He had left the state. Search mechanisms were activated and an Interpol red notice was issued for his international location. The case had already generated strong social pressure. Groups, students, and citizens protested, demanding justice for Jessica. Finally, on September 30th, 2020, 9 days after her disappearance, Diego was arrested in the state of Jalisco. Once arrested, he was transferred to Michoacán and held in a social rehabilitation center, where he underwent psychological and criminological evaluations. The analysis described egocentric personality traits, a constant need for control, and difficulty taking responsibility for his actions. A marked lack of empathy toward his partners was also identified. The profile pointed to behavioral patterns associated with dominance, manipulation, and violence within his romantic relationships. This was not isolated behavior, but a repeated dynamic. It also highlighted a tendency to downplay or justify his actions, shifting the responsibility to other people. Diego's trial began in January 2021. During the process, the prosecutor's office presented more than 120 pieces of evidence. These included scientific expert reports, phone analysis, security camera records, and studies conducted on the vehicle involved. One of the key moments was the testimony of the friends who were with Diego the night of the events. Before the court, they confirmed that he asked them for help to move the body he had in the trunk of the car. They described the trip to a wooded area and how Diego personally took charge of dumping the body there. These statements helped reinforce the timeline presented by the prosecution. The prosecutor's office argued that the crime should be classified as femicide due to the prior romantic relationship between Diego and Jessica, as well as the sexual assault and violence inflicted before taking her life. The context of control and history of violence in the relationship was also considered in the accusation. The defense tried to discredit some evidence and question the interpretation of the facts. At different points in the process, Diego stated that he did not wish to be present during the reading of the sentence. In February 2023, the court found him guilty of the crime of femicide and sentenced him to 50 years in prison. In addition, he was ordered to pay damages of nearly 2 million pesos and to cover psychological treatment for Jessica's family. However, the legal process did not end with that ruling. In November 2023, a court decided to modify the sentence and reduced it to 43 years in prison. The decision caused outrage among Jessica's family and various sectors of society who believed the original sentence should stand. The main argument for the reduction was based on technical criteria related to the individualization of the sentence, not on acquittal of the crime. Diego remained responsible for the femicide, but with a shorter sentence. Jessica's family filed appeals to reverse that decision. The case reached federal courts. Sometime later, the Supreme Court of Justice of the nation overturned the reduction and ordered the original 50-year prison sentence to be reinstated. With that ruling, the sentence imposed for the crime of femicide became final. One of the questions that arose after the sentencing was why only Diego was prosecuted and convicted for the femicide, even though other people participated in subsequent events. During the trial, it was proven that his friends helped move the body after Jessica had already been killed. Hannah Suarez's participation in actions related to the vehicle was also established. However, the charge of femicide was directed exclusively at Diego. The legal reason is that the main crime, the assault and the killing, was directly attributed to him. The subsequent help in moving the body was classified as a different conduct from the act of killing. In public reports of the case, there was no mention of a formal charge of femicide or complicity against the friends or against Hannah Suarez. Thus, the criminal process focused solely on the person considered the perpetrator of the crime. What is most shocking about this case is not just the violence of the crime, but everything that happened before. Diego had a history of aggressive behavior, was seeing multiple people at the same time, and showed controlling and dominant attitudes. Even so, Jessica decided to stay. She believed she could change him, that over time he would be different. That idea, so common in unbalanced relationships, ended up costing her her life. This is not about blaming her, but about understanding how, many times misguided love leads to justifying behaviors that are already clear warning signs. Relationships where there is control, humiliation, extreme jealousy, or physical abuse do not get better with patience or sacrifice. People who repeat patterns of violence rarely change because of their partner's wishes. When someone shows they need to dominate, intimidate, or hurt to feel superior, the healthiest thing to do is walk away. Waiting for the other person to change can become a very costly gamble. What happened after the crime is also disturbing. That same night, after taking Jessica's life, Diego went to dinner with his friends as if nothing had happened. That contrast between the brutality of the act and the apparent normalcy afterward reflects a level of coldness that is hard to ignore. Jessica's case is not just about a femicide, but about the importance of recognizing the signs of violence in time and not normalizing what should never be accepted. And well, dear audience, that's another investigation. What do you think of today's case? We would love to read your comments, as your opinion on these cases is very important to us. Please remember to always do so with the utmost respect, both for the victim and for other viewers, and we will be reading them. Before you go, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to share this video if you think someone you know might be interested. See you in the next criminal investigation. Goodbye.